During the 2020 war between Armenia and Azerbaijan, the U.S. largely sat on the sidelines, showing little interest in the conflict. That was during the Trump administration. But now under U.S. President Joe Biden, Washington is showing greater attention to the turmoil hitting the South Caucasus. And many are asking why. On Monday, the foreign ministers of Armenia and Azerbaijan met in Geneva to discuss a possible future peace treaty, following clashes last month that left nearly 300 dead. The fighting stopped under a U.S.-brokered truce. Just days after violence broke out at the border, U.S. House Speaker Nancy Pelosi visited Armenia, raising eyebrows about U.S. intentions in the region. And this week, U.S. National Security Advisor Jake Sullivan was in Ankara, where he met with presidential spokesperson Ibrahim Kalin to discuss the latest situation between Armenia and Azerbaijan. So, what's behind Washington's renewed push to get involved in the South Caucasus? And to discuss the reasons behind U.S. involvement in Azerbaijan and Armenia tensions, joining me now both from Washington, D.C., are Theodore Karasik. He is a senior advisor to Gulf State Analytics and expert on the region. And Umut Shukri is a foreign policy and energy consultant who specializes on U.S. energy diplomacy in the Caspian Sea. A warm welcome to you both, and thanks for joining me on Straight Talk. So, Theodore, following the latest border clashes between Azerbaijan and Armenia, which claimed about 300 lives, why do you think has the U.S. lately become so involved in peace process between the two countries? What's at stake for Washington?
Clearly, Washington is thinking about the outcome of this fighting between Armenia and Azerbaijan. But there's an opportunity here that presented itself, which is that Yerevan is seeking greater Western support for its position. And specifically, the United States has been targeting Yerevan to try to bring it outside of the Russian yoke, if you will, because Russia has always treated Armenia as a satellite state. A few weeks ago, or about a month or so ago, the CIA director went to Yerevan in order to open up the new embassy there and to also expand relations between Washington and Yerevan. This was immediately picked up by the Russians. They sent their SVR chief to try to untangle this mess that the U.S. has created for Russia. And this process is still ongoing, and that's why Nancy Pelosi went to Yerevan as part of a U.S. push to pull Armenia out of the Russian grip and bring it into the Western system.
Umut, would you agree? I mean, is Armenia really ready to move towards the U.S., and how would Russia react to that?
Yes, I agree with my colleague. And, I have to mention that U.S. lost its interest by George W. Bush era. And after that, Obama, Trump, and Biden followed the same policy. I mean, after the shale gas revolution and U.S. will be energy independence, and after U.S. troops withdraw from Afghanistan, U.S. lost interest in the Central Asia, Caspian Sea, and Caucasus. But during the Biden administration and after the Nancy Pelosi visit to the Yerevan, U.S. wants to show that has a new policy toward the South Caucasus and Azerbaijan-Armenia conflict. But I think this policy also roots its midterm election as well. We have the midterm election by the November, but we have to see what's going on by coming months. But I have to say that Russia is a major power in the Central Asia and South Caucasus, and this is from the security perspective, and from the economic perspective, China is a major actor, and U.S. needs new foreign policy towards Central Asia and Caucasus and Caspian Sea as well.
So, Theodore, Russia has abstained from assigning blame for the latest escalation, and President Putin said any conflict situation between these states close to, of course, Russia cause a serious concern. What's your take on that statement, and has Russia's position in the Minsk group weakened with its attack on Ukraine?
I think that Russia is scrambling a bit to try to control the Northern Caucasus and the Southern Caucasus at the same time. This region is pretty explosive right now. But when it comes to the Southern Caucasus of Armenia, Azerbaijan, and Georgia, Russia is still trying its best to keep these countries within its orbit as much as possible. You do see the Russian foreign secretary, defense, and so on. These guys, in terms of the diplomatic sector, are still trying to work out deals between these three countries that leave them within a Russian orbit. But increasingly, because the centrifugal forces and the forces of the requirement of rerouting logistic lines and so on away from Russia because of sanctions, it's putting pressure on Moscow to act faster. And so this tends to create a more unstable environment in the coming months.
So speaking of trade routes, Umut, what's the latest pertaining to the Zanzagor corridor, which Azerbaijan seems very keen on rendering it operational again? I mean, what's the Armenian and Iranian approach here?
You know, according to Article 9 of the case file, after the Second Karabakh War, the security and the guarantee, all the transition routes shall be unlocked by the Armenia, and Armenian government has to guarantee the safety and security of the transportation, of persons and the vehicle in the old transition corridor which passed the Armenian territory. During the Second Karabakh War, that Iran official and also army many times said that Iran is against any change of geopolitical and the region, and also strongly concerned about any changing the Iran and Armenia border. The construction of Zangezur corridor is in favor of every country in the region. We connected all the region in the Turkey and also in China and Europe together, and all countries will be again more economic and geopolitical benefit from the Zangezur corridor. But Iran, due to security concern, any change in the Iran and Armenia border and NATO presence in the region are concerned about the construction of the Zangezur corridor. But I have to say, Turkey as a NATO member is an Iran ally, and Turkey is a NATO member for more than 5 decades, and Turkey and Iran has a good relation. And NATO present in the region, it's not a realistic reason which present by the Iranian authority.
So, Theodore, aftermath the latest clashes between the two ex-Soviet states, Turkey's president openly voiced his support to the Baku administration, saying further provocations by Armenia would have severe consequences. So we know the U.S. stance as well as the French stance here. So how deep do the rifts between two NATO allies run when it comes to the stability of the South Caucasus and Armenia-Azerbaijan tensions?
It's a great question. I think it's a mixed answer right now because Europe is undergoing a certain amount of stress and strain because of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. And of course, this has a lot of ramifications. When it comes to the Caucasus and Europe, you see that France may have a particular position one week and then change it the next. This tends to not help the situation with trying to resolve issues in the Caucasus. At the same time, you have a Europe that is focusing really heavily on Ukraine, of course, but at the same time, there are a lot of hot spots developing in and around the former Soviet space, if you will, in Central Asia and the Caucasus. So for Europe, it's a matter of trying to get everybody in Europe on the same page when it comes to looking at Armenia and Azerbaijan. And of course, Azerbaijan as a gas producer and sending gas to Europe is a key for European future. Armenia offers what to Europe is probably the key question here.
Yes.
And it seems that with the energy futures at stake, that this is going to be really the driver for European policy. Where's the energy coming from?
Yes, yes. And finally, your foreign policy chief, Joseph Borrell, and members of the European Parliament will today meet to take stock of the latest military escalation between the two countries. So, following this landmark gas deal with Azerbaijan, how would the bloc, which is being criticized by some French senators over its neutral, let's say, stance towards Baku, navigate its policies between the two countries? Which one weighs more?
Ted, please correct me. I think the Nancy Pelosi visit to the Yerevan was the high-ranking U.S. politician visited the Yerevan after the independence. After the Soviet collapse. And regarding your question, I think EU and U.S. need to define a new foreign policy toward the region. As Ted mentioned, EU needs more natural gas from the Azerbaijan, and Azerbaijan will be able to play an important role in EU energy security. You know, EU faced a huge energy crisis, and winter is coming for the EU, but EU supporting Yerevan against Baku as well. As I mentioned, regarding some senators' statement toward the ceasefire and the conflict between Azerbaijan and Armenia, I think the majority is route to the midterm election, and we have to notice that the powerful Armenian lobby in the EU and the US as well. But without defining new foreign policy toward the region by Brussels and Washington, I think Russia trying to keep its monopoly and its influence in the region, and will be a major actor in the next decade as well in the region.
So given the current balances, let's say, between the US and the European Union, Theodore, is a lasting peace still a possibility today?
We're entering, or have already entered, a really unusual period in regional and world history, and the Caucasus are not exempt from this pressure. It's very clear that what's happening in the Caucasus is about rearranging property lines and trying to access certain assets that you can extract from the ground. On top of that are the new logistic lines that are being set up. Every time that there needs to be an adjustment in a border over the past 18 months or so, you see a confrontation between the two sides to try to rearrange that border. The corridor that my colleague was speaking about before so eloquently is really key in terms of the relationship between Armenia and Azerbaijan. Yet at the same time, that corridor serves a certain purpose that if the West is able to grab it, if you will, then it changes the calculus.
All right, gentlemen, unfortunately, we'll have to leave it here. Thank you very much for joining me on Straight Talk.